You set foot on foreign soil. Only this land isn't ruled by any country or government. In this land we celebrate music. In this land we celebrate games. In this land we celebrate those who compose video game music. Welcome to the VG Embassy. Welcome everyone, and thanks for tuning in to episode 3 of the VG Embassy. This is a new show centered around video game music and the amazing online community of fans and podcasters that enjoy it. Each episode, I, Ed, as your prime VG minister, will invite a guest VG ambassador onto the show to share with us their own video game music culture, or I'll share a part of my culture on a solo show. Today is going to be one of those solo shows. This was actually kind of a fluke. When I woke up this morning, I had no intention of doing a solo show at all within the first probably 10 episodes of the VG Embassy. And I just had this great idea that I was going to do a show today. So I put it together, and now I'm recording it all in the course of one day. The game in question is an old favorite soundtrack of mine. The game itself, it's not that amazing, so a lot of people might not have played it before, but I feel like the soundtrack needs a lot more attention than it gets. It's one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. We are talking about HyperZone for the Super Nintendo today. HyperZone is a behind-the-ship shoot-'em-up game that was developed and published by HAL Laboratory. It was released on August 31st, 1991 in Japan, and then it came out just 1 month later in September of 91 in the North American regions. This was very, very close to the launch of the Super Nintendo. So visually, I used to refer to this game as an F-Zero sandwich, and that the ship you control flies in between two scaling planes that look extremely similar to the racetracks from Nintendo's F-Zero launch title. The music was composed by Jun Ishikawa, and I personally think it's some of the best sounding music ever written for the console. So with that, let's listen to some music from HyperZone. This is the title screen theme. Alright, that was the title screen music from HyperZone for the Super Nintendo, composed by Jun Ishikawa. As a title screen song goes, this one, it fits like a glove for me. It's full of energy and texture, and it serves to set a pace for the game that you'll soon be playing. That is a fast and relentless pace. One thing I'll probably note a lot during the show is the percussive elements, the hi-hats and the snare sounds really help to fill these tracks out. And those bells in the B section on this tune sound super crisp and clean. I love it. All of the instruments and the instrument set for this game are just so well rendered, and I think that goes a long way in making these songs really sing and really make it kind of like the centerpiece of this particular game. So there are a few differences between the Japanese and the Western versions of this game, and they actually start at the title screen where this song plays. So in the Western version, after the HAL logo fades away, the word HyperZone appears letter by letter in orange, followed by a giant Z from the word zone, and it kind of scales. It starts really, really big and then kind of gets small and fits itself right into the logo on the screen. Then some motion lines appear faintly in the background to kind of give you the impression that the screen is moving quickly through space or something. But in the Japanese version, all the letters of the title scale in, kind of like the Z does in the Western version, but they're outlined letters with black centers. And then once the entire logo is complete, an extremely fast-scrolling image of a circuit board starts scrolling sideways inside the lettering. It's pretty cool. They both look cool, but I think I prefer the Japanese one a little bit more. It just kind of has a futuristic effect to it and kind of plays off the graphical capabilities of the SNES, which was brand new at the time, back then. So that's kind of one of the reasons I prefer it. Alright, so you press the start key at the title screen after enjoying the theme music for a while, and you're dropped right into the action. There's no story, there's no nothing, just you and a junky little spaceship that fires 2 forward energy bursts and your wits. Oh, and this music. Check out the theme from Level 1, Material Factory. And that was Level 1, Material Factory from HyperZone on the SNES, composed by Jun Ishikawa. I have some mixed feelings about this first track. While I absolutely love the percussion here with what almost sounds like, swishing nylon in time with the drums, I feel like the lead melodies are a little bit too twinkly for a fast-paced shoot-'em-up. I do like the almost alto, kind of female operatic voice that comes in just before the loop, though. I find it easy to get into games that have really energetic Level 1 music. It evokes the feeling that you're confident that you can take on the imminent threat, and at this stage of the game, you're easily gliding through the level and taking down the enemy, so maybe an aggressive, heroic track isn't entirely necessary just yet. So, some more interesting differences between the Japanese and Western versions of this game take place in levels 1 and 3. As a matter of fact, the level 1 and 3 themes were swapped in the two versions. The level layouts and the enemy locations remain the same between the two games, but the background graphics, the enemies, and the music are reversed for some reason. So in this show, we're going to be following the music order of the Western version, since that's the one I'm most familiar with. So when we get to level 3, that's actually going to be the first level theme from the Japanese version of the game. If you don't quite understand, don't worry, there's not going to be a test. Just listen to the tracks and enjoy them. So, let's talk a little bit about the gameplay. Now, if you could imagine like a very straight F-Zero track mirrored on the top and bottom of the screen, you've got a pretty good idea of what this game looks like. You need to keep your ship within the confines of this track, or else you slow down, and when you slow down, you lose energy. You move forward automatically, and your task is to destroy as many flying enemies as you can while avoiding their bullets and staying on the track. So sometimes the track narrows and it splits at points, and that makes it more challenging to stay fast and stay healthy. You can also slow your ship down a little bit, but this will also cause damage to you over time. So you gotta stay fast and you've gotta stay accurate. Your ship will upgrade itself over time as well, dependent upon your score when you complete a stage. Each upgrade improves your firepower, so be sure to kill as many baddies as you can. And it's really cool when you get a ship upgrade too, because then when the next level starts, you see your old ship kind of pulled over to the side of the track, and there's some like tiny little guys working on it, and this giant robotic arm comes down from the top of the screen, and it like drops your new ship like right in the center of the track. And you, this little tiny guy who's a pilot who was standing on top of the old ship, kind of uses a jetpack or something to kind of fly over to the new ship, and then he gets in, and then the track starts. It's really cool. Alright, so enough talk, let's get on to some more tunes. Here's the theme from Level 2, Blast Furnace. Alright, that was Level 2 Blast Furnace from HyperZone for the SNES, composed by Jun Ishikawa. Definitely one of my favorite tracks from this game. Now, I'm sure the first thing you're going to notice, though, is how the song starts the same way as Material Factory. It's got that kind of drum fill with that kind of sound. Well, that's built into every song on the soundtrack. It's kind of a musical sound effect that plays when your ship initially lifts off the ground to begin the level. The effect is pretty cool when you're watching the game in action, but when you're listening to the song by itself, every song starting the same way like that kind of sounds a little bit weird, but if you play the game, you kind of have context for it, so you get used to it. All that aside, I really love this track. The level being a blast furnace, it's filled with like reds and oranges and kind of permeated by black rock. This music just sounds so sultry and fiery. The tom drums echo back and forth from ear to ear, and I feel like I'm sitting in the middle of a tribal drum session in like a tropical jungle or something. And those leads have a brass-like quality with long and extended pitch bends and vibratos. It's so cool. It feels like real horn players playing little ditties in the song. And then it all culminates in a couple of jazzy horn stabs before a keyboard line brings the tone back down to the tribal rhythms of the next loop. Absolutely love it. Okay, so let's briefly talk about the man behind the music. Many of you are probably familiar with Jun Ishikawa from his work on the Kirby series. His VGM composition career began in 1990 with HAL Laboratories' release of Uchu Kebutai SDF for the Famicom. And that was kind of a rudimentary vertical shoot-'em-up that he was doing the music for. After that, he composed music for New Ghostbusters 2 and The Adventures of Lolo 3 for the NES, and in 1991, HAL released both HyperZone and HAL's Hole-in-One Golf for the SNES, both of which had his soundtracks on them. Now, 1992 was the year that pretty much defined the rest of his career. His work on Kirby's Dream Land impressed the higher-ups at HAL so much that he became the de facto lead composer on nearly all of HAL's future Kirby titles. From the NES to the SNES, N64, GameCube, and beyond, Ishikawa worked on nearly every one of Nintendo's platforms, hoping to bring Kirby's world to life. His last credited work, as of this recording, is Kirby Star Allies for the Nintendo Switch, and he was working alongside Yuta Ogasawara and lead composer and longtime collaborator Hirokazu Ando on that one, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw his name pop up in future Kirby titles as well. So, now that you know a little more about Ishikawa-san, let's listen to a track he composed that's another one of my favorites. This is Level 3, Old Capital. So funky. You just heard Level 3 Old Capital from HyperZone for the SNES, composed by Jun Ishikawa. Man, I am feeling like a late 70s dance vibe here at the start, with those like dancey hi-hats, there's a super groovy bass line, and some smoky brass section lead lines. So keep in mind, this was the track that the Japanese players heard at the start of the game in their version, so I'm not sure why they changed it for the Western version, but I'm not so sure it was the right choice. I would really rather have heard this song for the introduction to the game rather than material factory, but hey, it is what it is. So, with this track, I was totally hooked the first time I heard that kind of violin-like lead towards the end of the song, or that part where the instruments drop out, leaving only the drums to carry on solo. It really shows off that awesome percussive instrument set that Ishikawa chose for this soundtrack. And speaking of that, pay attention to how these tracks loop. Most VGM composers of this era like to hide their looping points, kind of restarting the song quietly so gamers wouldn't notice the music was on repeat. Did Ishikawa care about that? Heck no, he didn't. He's all like, let me just throw in some huge horn stabs, an instrument solo, and a completely obvious loop point, and they're gonna like it. And it's true. I like it a lot. So let's move on to the next track, shall we? Enjoy Level 4, Grassland. It's an extremely chill little number with a fantastic bass line. Alright, cranking right along here, that was Level 4 Grassland, composed by Jun Ishikawa for HyperZone on the SNES. Super chill, right? This level has you flying over fields of green. The floor and the ceiling textures look like they might have been designed for Hal's Hole-in-One Golf, released on the same year, but repurposed to a never-ending summertime shmup background. I really love this song. We're hearing more excellent drum and bass work with some warm leads and an almost vibraphone-like accompaniment. The only thing that makes me scratch my head is those out-of-place, dissonant, sour notes, like wah, 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 wah. I don't really understand what that's doing there. It's definitely an interesting design choice, but hey, as a song on the whole, it works very well, and after a few hundred listens, that weird part sounds like it's supposed to be there. Trust me, I know. So, the question most of you didn't know you needed to ask is, what's the story behind this game? Why are you flying through mirror-like levels shooting all sorts of stuff? The answer to that question is located in the manual, and oddly enough, the plot is strangely as relevant today as it ever was. The story goes as follows.
The human race has never learned the obvious lessons. Ignoring warnings about population growth, conservation of natural resources, and the dangers of chemical and nuclear waste, the inhabitants of Earth have reached the point where the human and animal life are unable to survive on the surface of the planet. Pitched battles over inhabitable land and border skirmishes over control of vital food-producing areas have broken out over most of the surface of the Earth. Chaos reigns. The Earth Council has decided that there is only one solution: colonization of as yet untouched and uncharted areas. The asteroid belts between Mars and Jupiter, hostile to most humanoid life forms, come under close scrutiny. Damaged by radiation from past wars and treated as a dumping ground by most of the inhabitants of the solar system, the combination of chemical, biological, and nuclear leftovers has bred a civilization of half-organic, half-mechanical beings that must now be conquered if mankind is to save itself. It's mankind's last hope.
So our only hope is to colonize a freaking asteroid belt that's already been overrun by mutants, hazardous chemicals, and malicious machines? Dudes, I think mankind is fighting a losing battle here. But fear not. There are more levels to be played, more battles to be fought, and more awesome music to listen to. Let's turn our ears to level 5. Ripple Field? Okay. And let's see what adventure awaits. Alright, that was level 5, the interestingly named Ripple Field from the SNES game HyperZone, composed by Jun Ishikawa. I like this track a lot because it matches the stage visuals so well. You're flying over an endless, soft blue ocean. The track is pretty narrow here, so the challenge level is a bit higher, but the calming music and the cool blue all around help keeps your blood pressure down. I think one of the secret tricks to this track's calming effect is how the hi-hats slowly pan from left to right and back again. I love focusing on them when I'm wearing headphones and just kind of tracing them to and fro with my mind. This also has one of my favorite loop points too. For some reason I think that little Hawaiian-sounding interlude followed by the drum fill is just amazing. I can listen to that over and over again. Okay, so we've gotten all of those hard, cold data sections out of the way. We don't have to talk about composers and all that stuff anymore. So let's get right back into the music. How are you guys enjoying the soundtrack so far? I hope at least a few of you are impressed. The next track is a bit more sinister in both name and musical tone. Let's listen to Level 6 Neo Megalopolis, coming up next. Howdy! That was Level 6 Neo Megalopolis from the SNES on-rails shooter HyperZone, composed by Jun Ishikawa. Here's another level where the music fits the background really well. So, all above and below you is an endless city, scores of blocks of buildings and streaking headlights making their way along the pencil-thin roads in between. This song feels like that city to me. It's got like a droning bass line and some really powerful drums that create a bit of a tense and unfamiliar atmosphere, but as you spend more time with it, you start to uncover the soul in that city, and there's some definite jazz and big band influence here once you get into the meat of the song, too. I could absolutely see a jam band with a horn section bringing down the house with a tune like this. Especially that trumpet blast at the end. Ishikawa's loop points are killer, man. I tell you what. So, next up is the most tense level theme yet. Level 7, Bioplant. This track will have you biting your fingernails. Pop a Xanax, and let's have a listen, shall we? That was Level 7 Bioplant, composed by Jun Ishikawa for HyperZone on the SNES. I don't know about you, but I'm on the edge of my seat for the first 45 seconds of that song every time I hear it. Then the tension finally breaks, and I can remember to breathe again. The B section of this tune is great. I get all those heroic feelings from the beginning of the game back again, with maybe a little hint of desperation or sadness in there. But then a few staccato notes later, we're right back into tension territory again. What a roller coaster. Speaking of crazy rides, this level's a weird one. The background's made up of like pink pulsing bubble wrap or cotton candy domes. I don't know, something like that. It's not exactly as frightening as the song might suggest, but then again, a level with a name like Bioplant could be just about anything. Only the game's designers know for sure what's going on in that cotton candy land. This brings us to our last level, Level 8, HyperZone. I know, quite the original name, right? I wonder if the game was named after the level, or if the level was named after the game. This is like a chicken and egg scenario or something. Oh well, anyways, onward to the HyperZone. Alright, that was level 8 HyperZone from the game HyperZone, composed by HyperZone. I mean Jun Ishikawa, my bad. Alright, great tune for a final stage. Those leads are so hopeful and heroic, but not nearly as strong as they were at the beginning of the game. And the percussion is disjointed and kind of alien sounding, so together they kind of represent our nameless pilot's situation. He's determined to win the right to colonize the asteroid belt, which I still think is a dumb idea, by the way, but careening through very unfamiliar territory. So this is where the game gets dark, and I don't mean dark like bloody or moody dark. I mean like the background is just a star field, and the track above and below you is nearly as dark as the space which surrounds you. So luckily the track itself is a straight wide path, so you need to really go out of your way to leave it while you're dodging enemy and bullets to take any damage from that kind of stuff. After you get through a couple of enemies and like some stronger mid-boss type characters, the last boss appears. Last boss is a giant brain thing in some sort of a flying saucer. He shoots a lot of bullets at you, but there's a lot of time in between each volley, so you've got plenty of time to pick safe spots. Hopefully by now you've got a decent ship and you're good with timing your charge shots, because a few dozen of those bad boys, and you're the proud owner of a slightly used asteroid belt. So yeah, you did it. Don't expect any sort of ending, because there isn't much of one at all. You do get a shiny slideshow of all the enemies you've faced throughout the game and a detailed look at the backgrounds of each stage, so that's pretty cool, I guess. But once that's done and a few credits pop onto the screen, you're dumped right back into level 1, only this time with your powered up ship. Ready to do it all over again? I didn't think so, but at least we listened to a lot of great tunes along the way, right? Cool. Alright guys, that brings me to the end of my HyperZone show. Alright, I'm just kind of guesstimating here, but probably about 140 full-length podcasts in the last 5 years, and I've done live panels, and I've done YouTube segments. This is the first time I've ever literally sat down and done a podcast all by myself. So I really need your guys' feedback on this one. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you liked parts of it, I don't know. Because I want to do a lot of solo shows. There are a lot of little niche games like this that I want to focus on. And if I can't present them in a way that you guys enjoy, then I shouldn't even be doing it at all. So give me some tips, give me some pointers, or just tell me to keep on doing what I'm doing, and that's what I'll be doing. Anyways, as far as HyperZone goes, do I recommend you play it? I recommend you try it out. I mean, it's a decently playable game. If you like shoot 'em ups, you might like this one, but it's not going to be anything you write home about. The music is great, at least in my opinion. I hope you enjoyed it too. There is a hidden sound test in the game, so if you do own the cartridge and you just want to listen to the music, go look up the cheat code and you can enter a sound test menu and just go through all of the music as often as you want to. Loop it on infinite for all I care. And I'm also interested in hearing some other games you might want me to do a solo show on. For the solo shows, I'm probably going to pick games that have relatively short soundtracks like this one, so I'm not going to go and do like Final Fantasy VI on a solo show, because you guys will get bored of only one voice for 5.5 hours, I'm sure. Alright, so I do want to thank Indira for the art, and Trevin Hughes, otherwise known as Dread, for the podcast theme song that brought us in today. You can find the VG Embassy on iTunes, just look us up. Please leave a rating if you do subscribe. The more ratings we get, the more visibility we get, so when a new show comes out, people browsing iTunes will see us on the front page of the show and they might give us a shot. And that would be great to have some more people listening so they can give me more suggestions and make the show an even better place to hang out. You can find the show on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/The VG You can find me on Twitter at The VG that's my show page, or at Ruiner9, that's my personal Twitter. And please, please, please leave feedback. We're brand new. I want to make sure the show is enjoyable. You can go to any one of our social media pages or thevgembassy.com. That's our blog roll if you don't have a social media account. Stop by, say hi, just say you listen to the show. I'd love to know that you're listening in. If you have any feedback, that would be totally awesome, one way or the other. I look forward to doing more episodes soon with more guests and more incredible music. I do have some great guests lined up, those who are other VGM podcasters and those who are just really big fans of video games and video game music. So, that about does it for the show. You can also look for our Patreon. I might have at this point some Patreon information in the show notes. As I said last episode, I'm kind of buffering a whole bunch of episodes very early on before the show's launch. So this is only the beginning of May right now, and the show is due to launch in July. So there's going to be a little bit of time in between here. So yeah, like I said, I am planning on having a Patreon to support new equipment for the show. I could definitely use a new microphone, and to also support the other artists that are helping me out, and just to do cool stuff and to give you some cool stuff. I'm hoping that I'll be able to get you guys some cool exclusive VG Embassy or VGM related content if you become a Patreon subscriber to the VG Embassy. So, taking us out today is the ending theme from the game, which is actually one of my favorite tracks in the game. It starts so nice and sweetly. I love the sweeping violins at the beginning, and there's little flute trills, and then the drums show up at the absolute most perfect way possible, and it leads into a wonderful melody that calls back to the game's title theme. Back in the days before the internet, it would probably be worth it to finish the game just for the ending tune alone, but now you've got my podcast to listen to. Thanks for listening, guys. I will see you next time. Once again, I am Ed, your Prime VG Minister from the VG Embassy. Take care.